Hi everybody. I wanted to take a moment and do step 8. I've had a couple people reach out to me and said they're busy doing their steps. They need a little extra help with 8 and 9. I'm gonna just touch on 8. If I can get through it fairly quickly, I'll move on to 9 because I know we want to get you guys through with your steps as soon as we can because we need more sponsors and we want more healthy people in our meetings. And I know you're going to have a much better life when you get through. So I want to help you expedite that. So step 8, made a list of all persons that we have harmed, long list some of us, right? And become willing to make amends. Become willing to make amends. That does not mean we run out and make amends to them. That's not what this step is about. Right now, it's just asking you to kind of look back and realize patterns and characteristics of when you lashed out at someone or when you maybe ran away from someone. You know, maybe they cared about you, something happened in your relationship and you just blew them off. And it was because you were fearful or because you were afraid of confrontation, right? I mean, lots of different things. It's also hard for codependents to consider that they harmed anyone. A lot of times we pride ourselves in being caring, loving individuals, which I'm not saying that we're not. But when we are actively codependent, it is extremely difficult to see that we're doing harm. We excuse it. We excuse it away because it's maybe in someone's best interest, we think. When we take away someone else's power to make their own decisions, that's harmful. When there are several examples, but I'm going to give you one that's really serious. I have a person that I know that is dealing with her son who is an addict. And by an addict, I mean compulsive addict, someone who gets sober and then goes back out, gets sober and goes back out, and has a really, really hard time staying sober. And what she is doing is enabling. She thinks she's helping her child, who is actually an adult now, people. This is not like a 16-year-old. This is a 30-year-old man that she's been coddling and is over involved in this person's life. And she feels like she's doing it to help him. She's keeping him from consequences. She's trying to keep him positive and all of that. And that's great. That's great. But when you are giving money to someone who is an addict, when you are providing shelter for them when they lose their house or their apartment because they've used all of their money on drugs or can't hold a job because they're on drugs and won't stay in rehab after you've paid for it for them to go, and then let them come home. These are examples of extremely toxic codependency, and it's enabling that addict. Okay? We don't learn until we fall, until we fail, right? She is totally in denial that anything she's doing is harmful. When a doctor told her not under any circumstance to talk to her son while he was in rehab, there's a reason. The reason is he can manipulate her and she can manipulate him. She needs to keep him sick. She needs to keep him sick because it makes her feel needed, makes her feel wanted. That is sickness. That is what severe codependency looks like. Because by her influencing him while he's in rehab, by opening up lines of communication where her son can manipulate her to feel obligated to come pick him up, okay, she can't say no to that. And he knows it. And what does that do? That gets him out of rehab, which is the one place he needs to be to get better. And the cycle repeats. She is putting her need in front of her child's need to get better and to get clean and to stay in rehab. That choice, that decision could lead to her son overdosing, her son never coming back out when he relapses, which he's done again, by the way. So this is a severe case of it, but that is what it looks like when we think we're doing something good for someone, and in reality, we're harming them. But we are so delusional sometimes in our codependency that we cannot see it. Okay? We are breaking compulsive behavior when we are starting to move away from codependency. When we start to acknowledge it and see it and, ooh, I don't want to do that anymore. And you start moving away from it. This is the type of thing that we're avoiding. We don't want to interact and engage in that behavior because we know that the consequences can be dire. So that is what I'm talking about. It can be subtle harm and it can be severe harm. So I want, again, harm is such a strong word and it comes with it a lot of connotations that are extreme. And that's not all that we're talking about here. Hurt feelings, right? That's harmful. It made someone feel bad. Maybe you manipulated something so that someone else would get in trouble instead of you. I mean, these are the kind of details that no one can fill out but you. And it's going to take some time. And the older we are when we start this process, even more history do we have to go back through and kind of, put some brain power in and try to remember. Some things are going to stand out for you. It's going to be things that you've kind of held in and probably felt really guilty about. So that's another thing that I want to talk about where if you're in your workbook, there's going to be some questions that will kind of help you with this. But it says the following may be ways we've harmed others and ourselves, right? You owe yourself an amends, many amends, right? So don't forget you on this list. Holding resentments, acting out, fearing intimacy, manipulating others, needing to be right, cheating, lying, stealing, obsessing, worrying, blaming and judging, emotionally abusing ourselves and others, physically abusing ourselves and others, neglecting our responsibilities, creating financial stress, abandoning ourselves, separating from our spiritual selves. Hits on something I want to mention. This amends, most of us need to add our higher power to that. I know I did. I had a lot of resentment, a lot of anger. Resentment is a number one thing you have to let go of. It will completely derail your recovery if you have resentment. If you have things that need to be addressed and closure needs to be given to that situation and you keep it, that's an excuse to relapse. And that's not only alcohol, drugs, that is codependent relapse. That means going back to that person that harmed you, or going back to old ways of handling your relationships that's going to lead you nowhere, or you wouldn't be in this program, right? So the list may grow, it says, as more is revealed and awareness is gained. We acknowledge we no longer wish to ignore our feelings. we work this step and find the possibility of relief. That encourages us to continue. It brings us awareness of old behaviors in ways that we've harmed ourselves and others. We acknowledge that we don't know everything about ourselves. We recognize behaviors have an effect and consequence. This is why we work these steps over and over to remain in truth, right? To remain honest in our lives. Because life doesn't stop when you finish 12th step. Stuff happens constantly, and we have to rework these steps on a continual basis. So I'm going to share something that my sponsor shared with me, and I wrote it down, and it meant so much to me, and it helped me so much with this step. Once you forgive someone, and yourself, right? I used this prayer to let my old self go. Now, that may seem a little crazy, but let me explain to you why. Because I would consistently, when I was working these steps, look in the mirror and still see the old one, the old me, the unhealthy me. That was before I took my authentic self back and started to take care of myself. So there was a period of time there that I was still in flux. I still hadn't fully embraced recovery. And it was hard for me. I kept seeing the shame and the guilt and the resentment and all of that stuff. So when you get through working this step, and you can use this prayer later, you'll see why. But for right now, I want you to listen. It's called the forgiveness prayer. I fully and freely forgive you. I release you, let you go to your highest and best good. Now quickly and in peace, all is cleared up, now and forever, and so it is. You've forgiven yourself. You've let yourself go. You've closed that chapter on the old you. The one who was sick, the one who would let people walk all over them, the one who would put themselves in harm's way or harmful situations too long, the one who wanted to be in everyone else's business and not focus on my own and my own stuff. I'm not that girl anymore. I'm not that person anymore. So in order for me to have closure, I used this prayer, and it worked amazing. And it also works amazing for people that owe you an amends that you know you're never going to get, right? Some of us have narcs that we have to, I say narcs, let me make sure you know what I mean. Narcissist or ex-narcissist or multiple narcissists in my case that I needed closure with. But to have that would have put me in harm's way again, and that's not okay. So I used this prayer. It also helped me get a visual image of closing my eyes and saying this prayer and seeing that interaction take place. So it really worked for me. So again, it's really important to work this step a little slower. Don't rush through this one. You're just going to hit the surface, and there's so much underneath that surface that needs to be extracted. I'm not saying stay on this for 6 months, but it's going to take some time to actually sit down and really think and be honest with yourself. Who do you owe an amends to? I even owed an amends to both my kids. That was hard, but I can tell you that by doing that, I have a healthy relationship with my kids now. And that's something I didn't think I would have. And yes, I made an amends to my little boy when he was, 5, I guess. That was big. And I did it on his level, but I made sure he knew that mom was taking care of herself and he didn't need to have that burden anymore. And by me not taking care of myself, made him feel like he was responsible for my happiness. And that sets him up to be what? Codependent. Not going to do that. Not going to do that to that little boy. And I couldn't go back and fix it with my oldest because, I mean, he had already moved out of the house when we had this. But I could let him know that I owned my shit. I owned my part. And that I was sorry. And I wish I would have gotten healthy sooner so he didn't have to suffer. But he forgave me. And that's something else really quickly. This amends is not about you having a face-to-face with anyone right now. This step, the amends that they're talking about here, is scanning your history, looking at your history for as far back as you can remember, and write down all of those people that you think you owe an amends to. It's not asking you to reach out to them or anything like that yet. You're not ready for that yet at this point. Finish this step. Talk to your sponsor. If you don't have one, a lot of us who are actual sponsors that have a bunch of sponsees like myself, we have time for 20, 30 minutes, maybe even lunch or coffee sometime. So reach out. We can do a quick run through of steps. I can also meet with you guys before our meetings at 6:30. So if there's something you want to talk about, or if you want to hit on some of those steps that you've done and you want to process them with someone, I'll be happy to do that. I just personally don't have the time to take on any new sponsees right now. But as they get done with their steps and then they start moving on to taking care of their own recovery and staying on track, they're still my sponsees, but I don't have to talk to them all the time, and we're not working on something like this. So, keep in touch with me, and once they start going off, I'll let you guys know if I'm available to be a sponsor. But we have some really amazing women in this program that do have availability to be sponsors. So please reach out if you need more information. Hope you liked this video. We've already gone over 15 minutes. That's usually all that they let me record on Facebook. So step 9 we'll be doing next week. So hope you have a good weekend. Everybody take care. Bye.